Hey everybody, back again, trying to teach some science. So we left off with ecological succession, which is a change in land over time. That's how I like to explain it. And here's a beautiful picture showing that, showing just that. Let's go into a little bit more details. I know we've discussed pioneer species, and pioneer species are going to be species that inhabit an area first. And if this is bare rock, bare igneous rock, young rock, before this develops into a beautiful soil, it has to break down. And so a term pioneer species was born, which means a species that inhabits an area first. These species would be things like lichen, beautiful lichen, grasses, and they're going to slowly erode away by biological processes these rocks. And as the rocks erode away, they turn into smaller rocks, smaller, eventually forming dirt. And then, as the biological organisms live and die, then it gains this rich humus, and soil is born. And now soil can support larger and larger creatures. All right. So know what a lichen is. Know that it is a pioneer species. Know that it is one of the first species to inhabit an area, specifically bare rock or glaciers that have just newly uncovered some bare rock, and then pioneer species will exist. All right. Okay. If you look at a concrete driveway or even a patio way, my neighbor has these things like bricks. There's pros and cons to the bricks. The thing about the bricks is they are permeable. So if you remember when we were talking about, recharging our groundwater, having these bricks, when it rains, the water is going to penetrate through, and it could go into groundwater runoff. However, with these little crevices, if you don't upkeep them, I think what you're supposed to do is refill like these cracks with sand and then compact them in on a yearly basis. Well, if you don't do that and you don't upkeep it, then the weeds come, and it's really hard to get rid of the weeds. And this is the result, succession basically. And we're going to call this primary succession. It'll make more sense in a minute. Primary succession occurs where there is no soil, just bare rock. This would be more asphalt, and that would be like a crack. And then once you get a crack, seeds are going to fall in there, and they just keep growing and growing. This is like my nemesis. I attack these things in the spring, and we just have a good old time fighting each other all year, all summer long. For like 6 months out of the year, we just basically go at it. All right. So these are weeds. Weeds are pioneer species. This is an example of primary succession. All right. So you're going to need to be able to distinguish the difference between primary and secondary succession. The difference between the two is going to be the presence of soil. Primary succession occurs when there is no soil, so just bare rock. Secondary succession is going to occur when there is soil present. Well, then what happened where all the living things have died on that place? Well, secondary succession would happen, like, let's say if there was a forest fire. There was a forest fire, there's still soil, just all the plant life has now died, okay, and it's basically on top. All right. The grasses may not have died; they might have just succumbed to the bottom, and they're going to sprout out a lot faster. And so another big difference between primary and secondary succession is, since there is a seed bed, ooh, that's a good term, a seed bed in secondary succession, it occurs a lot faster than primary succession. But basically, it's the same thing. Look, bare rock eventually ends into a big forest. Look, here we don't have bare rock. We have, sparse grasses, but dirt, soil, and then we end in that big forest again. Into that climax community. All right. This is basically telling you where primary succession will occur: volcanic eruptions, glacial retreats, and driveways. And then a forest fire, hurricanes, or flood, or agriculture could be a result, or will end up causing secondary succession. Once again, we get the smaller plants to the bigger plants and end in that climax community. Going back, this is over time. All right. There's another image here. driving home that point of you're going to have small plants, larger plants, eventually into the forest. Fun fact here: sometimes you get like say a little pond, if you will, a little pond in the middle of a forest. And if you have a little pond in the middle of a forest, and then after years and years and years, and trees pretty much lose their leaves, and let's say this is a fictional forest, a deciduous forest, the leaves could start to fill in that pond. And then that pond is eventually going to get filled in and turn into part of that forest. So succession could actually, you know, completely fill in a pond, and succession could occur as well. Just to get this picture in your head. All right. All right. Let's try to get to that next slide. All right. Now, during the succession process, there's going to be habitat diversity. For instance, this grasshopper sparrow is going to inhabit this area, all right, when there's grasshoppers. There's no grasshoppers at the end result of succession because it's basically a forest. The grasshoppers need to eat grass. So if there's no grasshoppers, there's not going to be a grasshopper sparrow. So this is a great image because it's showing you biodiversity on a scale, okay, at which organisms are going to be present, all right, during a particular time. So this is going to be what we call early succession species. This would be mid-successional species. And this is what we're going to call late successional species all the way at the end. Notice that the red fox and this bird called the veery are going to have to live in almost like a climax community, a well-established forest. But something like a cottontail rabbit or a meadow mouse or a grasshopper sparrow, these are going to live in areas that are like grasses, which have maybe pioneer species or species that inhabit areas earlier. Okay, so what type of questions could you get from something like this? Now, the big question is, where are there going to be the most biodiversity? Okay, is it going to be early, mid, or late? In this diagram here, if you took a cross section here and here, you would notice, and you counted all these, and you got the species richness, so if it basically counted all the different species, you would have many more in mid-successional species than late or early. Okay, because in mid-successional species, you're going to have a larger gamut. You're going to have more biodiversity of trees, habitat, which then could support many different life forms up here. So don't think that that climax community is going to have the best or be the best for in realms of biodiversity. It may not, because once the dominant species takes over, okay, it may eliminate a lot of the habitat that has created niches for the many different species that would inhabit that area. All right. Here's a great image. Okay. In this image here, you have and this is over time. Okay. So here you're going to have weeds. Weeds are going to be the first ones to start succession. Right. However, as time progresses, the weeds are now going to start to die out. You're going to have early successional trees. So those are going to be the smaller trees. They're going to dominate during mid-succession. But then during late succession, you're going to have those late successional trees, which are the sugar or maples. All right. Now notice here, if we were trying to measure at which of the highest peaks we're going to see the most biodiversity or biomass. Notice that it's going to be in this region here. And if I overlay this onto this, what we're talking about is during this cycle right here, where you're going to have all three, all right, early, mid, and late successional species the most. That's going to produce the most biomass, and we could approach that and say that's going to have the most primary productivity. And that's probably where you want it to go. So you don't want climax communities. You kind of do want climax communities, but if a disturbance happens, a disturbance might give early successional species a chance to come back, to increase the habitat diversity, to increase the amount of species diversity in that region. Whoa, let's put that all together. That's beautiful. You should pause that and rewind it back. This is amazing how good I am sometimes. All right. Okay, I have two other slides in here, and I don't even know why they're here. Maybe I put them in here because I saw some of the questions in the College Board AP Classroom, and I was thinking, well, it would be good to teach a little bit about this. Or maybe because the conversation is like, we care about biodiversity so much, but do we really care about mosquitoes? And a lot of you just hate mosquitoes. I hate mosquitoes too. And I hate spraying my body with pesticides as well to try to get away from them. A good fire is nice sometimes to scare away these mosquitoes. A controlled fire, but why do I hate mosquitoes so much? Well, they itch, but they also carry disease. Okay, and so I want you can pause the video, and I want you to remember at least 3 or 4 diseases that mosquitoes can transfer. The one that's really easy for me is malaria. Okay, malaria. And the reason why I think I talked to you about this, about my wife being heterozygous for sickle cell, and so therefore she has a built-in immunity towards malaria. But basically, malaria can be transferred by mosquitoes. Something called dengue can be transferred from mosquitoes. Zika, dengue and yellow fever. Dengue causes, I believe, flu-like symptoms. Yellow fever causes flu-like symptoms too. Dengue, I believe, also causes diarrhea, and you can die from that. Yellow fever, same way. Uh, Zika, the Zika virus, and the reason why I know about this because we were going to go to Peru before Addie was born. That's our baby, and I believe my wife had that idea. Hey, she wanted to have a third baby. If she gets bitten by the Zika or gets infected with the Zika virus while pregnant, then the babies could be born with a shrunken head. So we canceled our Peru trip because of that and other reasons. But try to know that mosquitoes can cause disease. Another thing is that my wife is always like, oh, we should move to Florida. We should go to hotter climates. I'm saying I don't want to go where mosquitoes live all the time. All right. I'm glad when we have our break from those mosquitoes. Okay. So malaria, dengue, yellow fever, Zika. All right. These are diseases caused by mosquitoes. Mosquito come from mosquito larvae. Mosquito larvae are born in stagnant water. All right. Water that doesn't really move. So if you have any buckets around your house in the summertime, and you know what if somebody bought a pool and then they don't run the pool and they don't have chlorine in the pool, that just turns into a big sloppy mosquito mess. All right, call the township on them. You got my permission. If you have a neighbor and they just have some tires in their backyard, call the town. There's water that gets stored in those tires. They turn into mosquito hotels, and they could spread disease. And you know what? I'm not going to put no one on blast, but I know some place that people train, and they had this big old tire out there so people could flip all the time. But then water gets stored in there, and then I remember training around it, and it's like a swarm of mosquitoes come out and they start chasing you. That'll give you some real training, but definitely call the town. That should not happen. If you have to have a big tire out because you want to flip it, then drill holes in it. Make sure that the water is coming out of it so you're not making a hotel of mosquitoes. All right. Dengue, malaria, yellow fever, Zika, these are all real diseases. Okay. And I know it's not Thursday, so it's not like, sad Thursday. Another bad thing that we have to worry about is that because of global climate change and mosquitoes and ticks and disease or insect disease is spreading. And so let's look at this list data right here. From 2004 to 2016, whoa, diseases, cases from mosquitoes, ticks, and fleas, we have increased. You know what I'm looking at this? I'm also looking at a percent change type question. Would you be able to do that? All right, and hopefully you could. Okay, so since climate change is occurring, typically mosquitoes would be stuck in warmer climates. However, as our climate starts to get warmer and warmer, they're moving towards different areas that they have not frequented, and therefore they're spreading their disease even a little bit more. All right, that's Unit 2 in a nutshell. All right, you guys are amazing. Have a great day.